I'm not sure if this is gonna work. I've had a couple of cutoffs, but that is not due to the service that I use, which is called silent.link. Look it up, use it. I'm not anonymous now. You see my face and voice and everything. But it just works. It's a private link. Privatism, pay using Lightning or Monero, then you're online. And now it works beautifully. To have services that just work out of the box, I mean, you don't have to have any hassle. No email login, no nothing. Just pay, get a link, install, top it up. Really great. And you can't talk about things like that because you're regarded as clown world here is hard to describe. But the tide has been turning. There is this watershed. I can talk about things like that. There is a certain amount of people here now that get it. There are big things happening culturally, geopolitically, the financial systems, the plumbing of the financial systems, fiat is failing, new technology, AI, and absolutely mind-boggling things like Bitcoin. How do you navigate all of it? How do you navigate all of it when you can't even talk openly about it because things will be misunderstood? I even mentioned sometimes that my head is swiveling. That's not because I'm up to something that I shouldn't be here. It's because I've been living in Asia. I'm used to people coming at me from whatever angle. And it could be dangerous. So, things are so dumbed down here. So I've been in this kind of thing where I've started from scratch, started from nothing several times. Built a couple of small companies, resilient companies. It had some meaning. I was working smart. We had like maybe 15 people to deal with across these two tiny entities. And I did everything by the book, and even beyond the book, like what's intended. It all fell apart. What happened like 6 years ago, but it also fell apart because you can't trust the bureaucracy here. You can't. There's no risk reward for anyone who wants to start something new from scratch. So the people who, when I go through these facts with people here, they all go like, no, it's so easy, and statistics says this and that. It doesn't matter. When I talk to small shop owners here, some are the ones that have weathered the storm for 40 years. My working life started here 40 years ago. Part of it was for my grandfather, who was a caretaker, like a janitor, I mean, and so I had that responsibility when I was 15. I had the key to the whole condominium. Like, never lost a key since. Never ever lost a key because he imprinted in me like, if you lose this key, it's gonna be really expensive and not good. The other type of work I did was working for a small local chain of family-owned local chain of photography stores. How I got into photography. The name of that chain, it's dead now. The last branch that I was part of opening, I think I worked it on the third day or something, when they opened a mall outside of the city here, and everyone were talking about how the mall would kill off the local shops. That happened. here we are 40 years later. But the name of that chain still has some value here. So I have this tiny network of business owners and people that I can trust here, and they start trusting me, and I can say things now that I would never imagine I could say, and they say things that I can't even repeat here. So there is a certain hope. But Europe is going to go through an excruciating process. It's for someone like me who always wanted to do my own thing, who never went along with the old spiel of like these corporations and state ganging up together and digitalization. I've been part of the digitalization. One of the companies I was kind of like the architect behind and like the motivator was a web development co-op. We had one of the largest publishing houses here as a customer. But I never gave my real data away to social networks and things. Now I'm doing it. So there is this watershed moment. Personally, I have to. What am I going to rebuild here after Europe falls apart? Because one way or another, it will fall apart. It is falling apart. Maybe I could be shielded here. I could stay here. I could buy a boat and hang out at the coast and start fishing and sort of weather the storm. But the people are gone. So I've met several people in Asia, like them mostly. Like some of the people I've met are the types that leave early, the types that you never want to leave because they really know how to do something. They're much more capable than me. One was a guy who was a security expert for chemical plants, securing, basically making sure that chemical plants don't blow up. He told me he left because he couldn't take the bullshit any longer. When people like that leave, well, you can't replace people like that. I bet someone will try to start using AI to safeguard the chemical plants that he was. So you see this kind of thing. I could re-establish myself here, but the problem is that I have the experience from this in many ways. Not only the two companies I mentioned, but earlier on too, and in my private life. Almost all of your energy would go toward handling bullshit and basically explaining for people how extremely basic things. You have to dumb yourself down constantly. You have to expect asinine questions and doubts and sometimes attacks for reasons that are so out there on such a low level that it's a real feat to stoop down to that level. And this goes on in, there's a lot of pride about the private sector here. Well, the 10-year-old numbers, the official numbers 10 years ago is that the state controlled 66% of the economy. And even back then, you did not. The big corporations and also the private, like the individuals like me, who I did depend on, due to illness, I had it's a long story. But anyway, those numbers do not even get close to the real thing because they do not count, they do not make any numbers or any modeling on the big corporations that depend on the state, like the consultancy companies and firms. I'm sure that there's a lot of gaps there. So the numbers, overall numbers, would be higher even in 2016. That's 10 years ago. From networking on the ground, when I started going through and analyzing what the hell happened the past decades in 2020 when I had the time, I basically bought a motorbike and hanging out at a local temple, and I started analyzing what the hell had been going on since I was a youngster. So I did a lot of networking on the ground, and going through that, I realized that I think honestly, maybe even when I left in 2018 or so, maybe 5% of the people doing real heavy networking, like constructive building of relations on the ground, 5% in this BNI network that I was a member of. We built one of the companies based on that. Then when I ended up in Asia, it's like obviously most of the people had just like some sales budgets from the corporation, and it's like what's a cool thing, and a lot of people were burning their own money to become the next Silicon Valley, blah blah blah, and some had like a stipend from the state for being unemployed, or in my case, I was so sick that I had to crawl across the floors. I still created some of these workplaces. It can't be repaired, honestly. So in Asia, of course, you have the amount of people in networking that basically decide for themselves, and they have to make a living on their own, or it's like a small, medium-sized business where they have some say and they have to meet some budgets and build something real. Of course, it's much higher, probably more than 50%. I don't know. I haven't got that much experience, but the atmosphere is completely different. And so I'm approaching a wall on the church here that I used as a background when I was a photographer. Started out as a photographer in this newspaper, student newspaper. It was idealistic work, but it's bloody hard. I used to do like 16, 18, 20 year olds 4 days in a row every month to get a number. So I chose this background when I was learning because there was this one student. She just came back from DDR. This was in the late '89. I had just disbanded from being up north, literally up at against the Soviets when I was 19 to 20. I was literally up against the Soviets. I was in a single corps. We were target number 2 after the radar stations. It was very real. Everything started changing that summer. And this was before the wall fell. And she told me things that I haven't even seen in history books. So I have a clipping from it. What she said was basically that the students were really rebelling and organizing themselves, and I guess they were part of the big citizen movement, especially in Leipzig and Dresden. And it was in Dresden that the colonel in the East German army just flat out refused when he was given the order to start literally mowing down the masses. I saw it up close from afar because I paid attention. I had just gotten my student grant, and I was loaded, and then the wall fell, and I better get in a taxi now. I'll camp out at the airport. I get the first flight somewhere. I can be there. I really regret that I didn't do it. That's what made me always do wild things after that. But now we are reliving it. It's the same thing. In terms of social dynamics, it's the same thing. Because when you get masses, like what happened in England, which is a country I got a fun relation with, but when things like that happen and it is censored and ignored, and when things like what's happening with the dialogue, like the tiny bits of real dialogue that they allow around this organization that I was a part of, going up against the Soviet Union. I don't feel I can mention it, but everyone knows because there's AI trawling all of this. Finally, there is some real glimmers of real information coming in the European system. EU is one of the big problems. City of London, all of these things. It's the same process. A tiny bit of real information and real debate is coming out against an enormous apparatus trying to silence everyone. It was the same that happened when the wall fell. I remember that very well. There was a tiny bit of peace, a tiny piece that said that someone in the party had discussed that if they could in the future discuss the wall, tiny bit. A few days or a week later, there was like a larger piece, and then there was like some real news, and then boom. That is how it happened. Now we have the internet, and information travels differently. But when you can't talk openly about things, people have been reverting to trying to talk to people, and I've been reverting to being myself as I was before the internet, as I was when I grew up in the 80s. Well, now I'm out here, and I just need to point to this time in history that we are living now because I recognize it. I think that's my duty, actually. Because I want to be non-violent, I want to get through this, I want to build something on the other side, and I'm not going to just close my eyes. That's all. That's all. So, 3 likes, thanks. Maybe I'll do a text to get this ranking or whatever, but it's mostly just that. I'm not going to go quietly into what they've planned, and this is an official, yeah, told you so, and what's going to come next. That is what is important. So, good luck.